Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perceive 2021. Please give a warm welcome to our distinguished guests from UiPath, Uma Natarajan, Head of Customer Success and Pre-Sales Technical Engineering, and Joel Cherkis, Vice President, Global Industries, who will be speaking about the convergence of automation and AI. Welcome to our stage.
Thanks for that introduction. It's fantastic to be here with everyone today. I am Joel Cherkis with UiPath. I look after the global industries team, and I've got partnering with me Uma Natarajan, who leads our pre-sales and customer success business. Uma and I work very closely together with our customers and our product teams as we bring new capabilities to life in the automation space. We're privileged to be able to spend some time with you today, and really what we want to talk about is where we see the world moving and using some very real world examples around automation and specifically the role that AI plays in that overall process. To do that, though, I thought it would be good to just set the tone. And while I realize the quote that you see in front of you is from a CIO's perspective, it's the technology play that I think is important. So hopefully many of you know who Prakash Kota is the CIO for Autodesk. And recently in a conversation, he was talking about, how exciting it is to be involved in technology because technology is leading the way to solve the challenges that our customers have in everything that they do day in and day out. This is important for us because when you look really at what customers are trying to do in supporting their end customers or supporting the missions that they have, they're still struggling with a lot of the same challenges that have been around in the industry for many, many years. Budget constraints and expectations, whether it's from the internal customer, the external customer, things along those lines. The role that fraud, waste, and abuse is playing in organizations. We're seeing, huge increases in the issues that exist out there. Attracting the right talent into the workforce is harder than ever. I assume all of you are, watching the news and you see the struggles organizations have in not only finding people that are willing and able to do jobs, but that have the right skill sets to do that, especially as the modern skill sets need to interact with the existing skill sets. I'm a longtime developer. I come from many, many years in the technology space. And what I found is that many of the systems that have existed for 30 years still exist today. And they have to work with, web services, APIs, things like that. And they have to be secure. And from a data perspective, they have to be in full compliance and governance. And so these are huge challenges for organizations. And really, the role that we look at from a UiPath perspective is we're an enabler to helping this happen. And the reason that we're really targeting the automation space and think of the automation space as augmenting the workforce. The main reasons we're going after this is if you look at some of the statistics that have come up from some of the reports that have been done publicly, a lot of the studies, you find that productivity amongst workers is down. And the productivity, when you unpack that, the reasons that the productivity declines exist is just the volumes of systems that people have to be able to interact with, the number of tasks that exist, the amount of time it takes to do those tasks is continuing to increase. And so what we're seeing is that there are, if not billions, possibly even trillions of hours every day that are being spent around the world on these manual tasks where we think there's a lot of opportunity for us to help in the automation space. This will continue because even if you just look over the past 4 years, we've seen that there's about a 70% increase in the number of applications that organizations need to use day in and day out. And then you put something like COVID on top of all of those challenges. So think of COVID as it's an acceleration mechanism that's happening where there are more people that are working in remote environments that needed access to devices. In fact, from a UiPath perspective, one of the big workloads we saw were organizations calling us instantly saying, we've got to get more people into the workforce in a remote setting than we've ever done. How do we do that quickly? I would say easily. There was no easy solution to it, but how do we do it quickly? And how do we use the digital tools to help organizations that are going through that digital transformation process or targeting that, do that in a faster way? The end result really is there's acceleration with automation, where automation is being used to enhance the workforce, to remove some of the tactical issues that exist in organizations and move those faster than it's ever happened. So when we look at automation, really, where does it fit into play? Well, the first thing that we're always trying to do is figure out what workloads people are doing that can be assigned to have robots. Think robots. When I say the word automation, they're used interchangeably. These are software robots. And what we're trying to do is figure out where we can assign the workloads to the robots, or robots and people working together, so that people can become more efficient. We're looking to ensure that every person has some sort of a digital assistant, so a robot at their disposal that can help them do the tasks that they want. We're trying to make it easier for people to build the automations that they need. So we use the term democratized development, but think of this as no code or low code if there is some sort of very specific thing people need to do. But these are not long-term development cycles with heavy management environments. They're quick. They're able to be scaled and deployed and shared across organizations, or even beyond organizations through things like public marketplaces, open source, things like that. And really, where we see that the big kicker or the big opportunity is around unleashing AI into this space. And so our goal is to make AI a core component of how organizations are doing automation, how they're interacting with their end customer, how they're improving their capabilities. And when you look at that, what we're trying to figure out is ultimately, what can automation do for you with the role of AI in there? And think of it this way, for those that may not know much about automation, we look at automation as the capability of mimicking human behavior. So anything that a person could do in a digital fashion, there's probably a mechanism that allows an automation tool, a robot, a software robot, to be able to do with you. The robots are rules driven, which means they can only do the things that you tell them to do, or that you code them to do. Again, using that no coding environment. It's a drag and drop type of a development environment that people use. But being able to set it up in a decision-based environment, so that ultimately you can seamlessly integrate really with any type of an application, whether it's something that you've procured, something that you're using as a service from another provider, or something that you've built internally. Now, what can these robots do? Well, again, it's anything that a person could typically do in a digital fashion. They can log into a machine. They can move a mouse on a screen if no API or web service exists. They can interact directly with databases. They can monitor inboxes. In fact, these are some of the scenarios that we see organizations doing very frequently, is pivot chair types of activities. So looking at one system and making a decision on some data and doing something with the data, even if it's just doing a copy paste or scraping the data from one application, placing it into another application, either directly or using some sort of a rule set. These topics become very quick to be adopted within organizations, really across all of the different departments. And the reason is, what we're finding is that pretty much anything that can be automated is being automated or is being looked at to automate. And on the slide, you see a bunch of different examples from different departments and organizations, but think about it, HR, onboarding and offboarding. There's a bunch of tasks that have to happen when a new hire joins an organization. It's not just provisioning a user ID, but it's possibly setting up a phone number for them, an office location if they're going to go to a physical place, ordering a laptop or a company credit card, those types of activities. Similar with offboarding, we have to turn off all of those different systems. We have to get employee property back. There are a lot of mechanical steps that have to happen. Automation's perfect for that. So as we see automation really kicking in, I thought a couple of examples that would be useful. So you see 5 different pillars on the screen, and my goal here is not to walk through all of them, but it's to leave you some thoughts. These are the top 5 categories where we see automation and AI being implemented with organizations. So think of it as anything with documents. And I'm still amazed at the number of documents that exist in organizations. They could be handwritten documents, they could be digital documents, but any kind of document processing that then needs to be placed into another system, very hot. Contact centers. We see contact centers across organizations where people are interacting with a person or a bot or trying to gain access to some data. There's a lot of steps that take place from a digital fashion behind the scenes, but there's a lot of manual work that happens. So we see huge adoption. Doing things like audits. So fraud, waste, and abuse. It could be insurance claims. It could be citizen requests that are happening. It could be a sales call, somebody calling into their local telecom provider and looking to upgrade their phone. Making sure that people have access to the right benefits or the right services. And you'll see on the slide, there's some value numbers at the very bottom of the screen. We've talked to a lot of organizations that have come back saying we're either saving this amount of money today or we're benefiting in this way, or we expect to over time. The other two that you see on the screen, cybersecurity, think of that as IT modernization and IT automation. And then any type of benefits, customer benefits, engagement. How do we know exactly who the customer is and how we're going to work with them? So these are just some examples where we're seeing a lot of capability. What you'll see on this slide, and I want you to look towards the graphic on the left where it talks about RPA. So that's Robotic Process Automation. That's what the acronym stands for. You'll notice in the center that kind of the blue section, those are all the things that I talked about. All of the things that can be automated are being automated. These are things that automation tools are extremely good at being able to do in today's world. Where we're seeing the big growth opportunity is in that orange ring, that outer ring that says AI. So being able to do things like not just take data from a document, but understand what the document is. Is this an invoice? Is it a receipt of some sort? And if it is, what is the data that's on there? How do I classify those fields? Or how do I do sentiment analysis? Or how do I do conversion of a task that's happening and mine the task for areas where there's an opportunity to improve the task, or streamline it, or do some better level of integration? The other thing I want to point out is towards the bottom right of that orange circle, you see where we talk a bit more about data, unstructured data and semi-structured data. I think, honestly, that's the holy grail for the next 5 years of where AI is going to play in the automation space. And I think it aligns perfectly with everything that we're doing with Clarifai and many of you are doing with Clarifai today. The other piece I wanted to point out was the use case examples are endless. So this is just a small portion of the areas where we're seeing AI opportunity and automation with our customers. We look at it from a vertical industry perspective because all of our customers fall into some vertical category. And this is just a sampling. So just to give you an idea, at UiPath, we have 14 verticals that we track. So additional ones are things like manufacturing or telecom or consumer packaged goods, although that could fit with retail in some cases, high tech, media and entertainment. So there are a lot of opportunities that are out there, and we're continuing to unpack those each and every day. Now, I've given you an example of automation, and what I thought I would do was turn it over to Uma, because Uma really is, she's the big brains in the AI story when she and I are out talking to customers. So Uma, let me flip it over to you and get some of your insights.
Thank you, Joel. So thank you so much for having me first on this conference. Clarifai has been an exciting partner for UiPath. With that being said, if you think about AI, we've only scratched the surface with AI. There's a huge AI gap that still exists. Even AI projects that are taking off don't really reach production due to various reasons. It could be the data is not clean enough, the data is dirty, or like it has not been normalized enough to reap the benefits. So with all of these challenges, especially with security, privacy risk, even AI ethics, and how does that play, and also the siloed data that exists within like a big organization, be it in public sector, because public sector is where I've spent most of my career, or even in financial industries where data is owned by certain line of businesses. Getting all of that data together to make sense of it is a huge issue by itself. So it requires a lot of top-down and bottom-up approach. With those challenges, how do we enable AI and get it into the hands of end users is where I see Clarifai and UiPath playing well together. With that being said, Joel, can you move on to the next slide? So if you think about how RPA plays into this big like AI space, I really believe RPA as the cornerstone of getting AI projects to production. So if you think of automation and RPA, we basically help with the bookends of what is required to make AI work well. So you need to cleanse data. You need to get data loaded into these models. You have to make sure that the data is relevant to what you are trying to get out of that model. With all that being said, RPA plays that place of the hands and legs of what is required for the brains to operate. You want something done, you have to move data, you have to like shift data. So for all of that, you do require the capabilities of RPA to enable AI. One of the things that I found really interesting, if you go back in history in the 90s, we had dial-up modems. How did like that whole era of dial-up modems to where now we are talking about IoT come into play? We started with dial-up modems. We moved into a space of getting internet into each of the homes that currently we own and to every property that exists in this wide like world. With that being said, now we've reached a space of connecting all of that data together. We have consumer AI, we have companies like Uber, Amazon, all of them that actually gather insights from all the devices that exist in our home. And that's where AI is heading. That's consumer AI. Where I see a whole new world of AI capabilities is in like really driving it in the lines of businesses at enterprise scale. So if you take finance, you take HR, you take like mission, there is like millions of use cases that gets enabled with RPA and AI working together. That's what I'm going to talk about today in terms of where we could take this partnership with Clarifai to the next level. One of the things that really got me interested in the AI space is the endless opportunities that exist in this space. You take a particular use case, you can definitely like put RPA and AI together. And it could be a very siloed model, but the power of that is in the predictions that it offers. A simple use case that I will talk about during this process is going to be around like even a small use case like, for example, passports. We get like every organization in the world within public sector gathers passport data, or a particular organization in public sector gathers that passport data. But what do they do with that data? They've collected all that data for years. Are they making sense of that data? So that's where a siloed logical model would really help in predicting not only the dangers, but futuristic travels of like a particular like person, a particular airplane within a space. So all of these are where I see AI and RPA playing a huge role, where we gather that data and really help with building models that will take an organization to the next level in the next few years. Joel, can you move on to the next slide? So this was a use case that I actually, me and my team actually developed with Clarifai in the last few weeks. This is where like I got really excited looking at what Clarifai has to offer, especially in their audio feed models, their like video models, their image detection models. These are all like amazing capabilities that Clarifai has. So what we did was we actually built a use case that shows the capabilities of UiPath, Clarifai, and any ticketing system that's available within an agency. So this use case basically talks about how you could use an RPA bot to gather all that data, process it, and then like, do something with that processing. Joel, could you please play the video that I have? So here basically is the use case I just mentioned. One of my principal sales engineers, Ben, built this particular automation where the robot receives an image of a damaged airplane. This particular image is then like processed through one of our like application tools within UiPath Studio. We call the Clarifai image model. We basically gather the attachment, pass the attachment to the model, look for like the damage, analyze the damage, get the results back, pass it on to a ServiceNow ticketing system where we open a ticket, process the ticket, make sure that the maintenance engineers are looking at the damages and processing them, get the ticket like analyzed, attach the image of where the damage is, and make sure that the whole issue is detected and processed and repaired within a short time frame. Completely automated. It brings AI into a business process and actually shows value of how RPA and AI could work together. So this is a perfect example, a very small example, but really powerful. This really not only applies in like, airplanes, but it could be any image that you could parse and figure out if there are damages and find like use cases in like finding potholes on streets or any other possible like, damages where you could apply this model and UiPath to really fix an issue. Totally applicable in the logistics and maintenance space. With that being said, I really feel UiPath's and Clarifai's partnership is going to go beyond these small use cases. There's tons of opportunities for UiPath and Clarifai to work together. I'm really looking forward to seeing like much more broader and applicable use cases around like, audio, video feeds. I've already started like exploring use cases around that. So really looking forward to showcasing more in the future. With that being said, I'd like to hand it off to Joel to wrap it up with like some of his thoughts around the whole capability of UiPath and like RPA and AI. So Joel, thank you so much. Yep.
Fantastic. Thanks, Uma. So hopefully what everybody was able to see, the beauty of the demo environment was it was a seamless partnership, seamless integration that was working with UiPath and Clarifai. In this case, ServiceNow is in the mix as well. But when we look at really where the opportunity is, I know this is a busy slide, but what I wanted everyone to realize is our goal is that we should be able to work with all of the technologies that exist out there. And when I say we, it's not UiPath, it's UiPath and Clarifai. Together, we can benefit a tremendous number of customers because many of those customers have different bits of technology. They're on different platforms. They're maybe using different cloud providers. And so the beauty is we can work from an API perspective, a web service perspective, or even just, as I said, moving a mouse around a screen, clicking keyboard strokes, behind the scenes. So the possibilities really are endless. And I think it's up to all of us to look at what our customer opportunity is, what our customers are trying to do, and figuring out where ultimately we can work together. I thought it would make good sense for Uma and I to leave you, if not with just the ideas, but also our contact information. We'd encourage people, if you have interest in talking more about this, obviously you have your contacts there with the Clarifai team, but this is Uma and my email address as well, open invitation. Rest assured also, we work very closely with the folks at Clarifai behind the scenes, and we're every day looking at new opportunities, and we'll continue to share those. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's been a fantastic event overall, and we're really pleased to be able to highlight the partnership that we have with Clarifai. And we'll look forward to the ongoing conversations with everyone. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Uma and Joel. It was a pleasure. A big round of applause from our virtual audience. We will see you at our next session.